On November 5, 2024, the results of the U.S. presidential election sent shockwaves across the world. Donald Trump, a polarizing and controversial man, achieved a dramatic political comeback, securing a second term in office. His comeback wasn't driven by smart politics. Instead, it was his uncompromising rejection of the out-of-touch political elites, the so-called deep state, that struck a chord with millions of voters. His America First slogan, promises to drain the swamp and restore America's industrial power, was very appealing to many. Trump gave a voice to Americans who felt betrayed by the promises of previous presidents and nostalgic for the good old days. Many of Trump's core supporters believe the America they once knew had been stolen from them, and Trump is the man to punish those responsible and return America to its former glory. Just a few years ago, the United States stood unchallenged as the world's preeminent economic and cultural superpower. For much of the modern era, the U.S. wasn't just leading the world, it was defining it. It boasted the fastest-growing, most innovative economy on Earth, transforming itself from an isolationist republic into a global industrial and technological titan. America's economy far outpaced its rivals, its influence stretched into every corner of the globe, and the American dream became a reality for millions around the world. But now, the future feels uncertain to millions of Americans. Wages have stagnated. Infrastructure has aged. Entire industries have vanished. Political trust has been eroded. Cities like Detroit, once filled with opportunity, now struggle with crime and poverty. The middle class, once the engine of American growth, is shrinking, caught between crushing inflation and declining opportunities. It's in this landscape of disillusionment and division that Trump reemerged. His victory in 2016 wasn't just political, it was a statement. For tens of millions, Trump represents a chainsaw against a political and economic order they believe has betrayed them. Yet Trump is not the savior of working Americans. He speaks to ordinary people, yet governs for the 1%. Behind all the talk lies a record of broken promises and political theater. He vowed to bring back industrial jobs, but they continue to disappear. He promised to drain the swamp, then filled his administration with lobbyists, billionaires, and cronies, enriching themselves on taxpayer dollars. For all his talk, Trump's tax cuts will overwhelmingly benefit the rich and large corporations, not the struggling families in Kentucky or Georgia who put their faith in him. So how is Trump destroying the American economy? For one, Trump's push for mass deportations is creating chaos. Currently, there are around 11 million people living illegally in the USA. According to the American Immigration Council, it would take more than 10 years and cost almost $1 trillion to deport all 11 million. Protests have erupted across the country calling for an end to deportations and for Trump's impeachment. Some protests have even turned violent, especially in LA, where protesters clashed with the National Guard. Mass deportations would create huge labor shortages, especially in industries like agriculture and construction. Over 50% of U.S. farm workers are undocumented. Deporting them would disrupt food production and raise prices in a time where many American families are already struggling with inflation. Food security would fall as the USA would have to rely on more imports. In addition, many U.S. cities are facing housing and homelessness crises. The USA faces a housing shortage of 3.7 million units, pushing home prices and rents to record highs. Around 20% of all construction workers in the USA are undocumented. A shortage of construction workers would slow down projects and increase labor costs. Unaffordable housing will also worsen wealth inequality and geographic mobility, meaning job opportunities for workers are limited. Trump's reckless tariff policies are sparking trade wars that are hitting everyday Americans where it hurts most, in their pockets. In theory, tariffs are taxes on imports, but in reality, it is a tax on consumer spending. Everything from groceries to electronics to cars will become more expensive. Too much inflation will damage economic growth, putting millions of jobs at risk. However, everyone and their pets already knows this. Something that is less talked about is the long-term effect tariffs are having on America's international relationships. The immediate damage caused by the tariffs wasn't just economic, but also diplomatic. Despite friendships spanning decades and long-standing free trade agreements with many of the tariff countries, Trump did not care. Nations like South Korea and Canada were stunned by Trump's tariffs. These actions damage America's credibility. Many countries are now focusing on diversifying away from the USA. Governments around the world are building insurance policies, new trade routes, supply chains, and defense alliances. For example, Canada is the world's fourth largest producer of crude oil, most of which flows to the U.S. However, given Trump's annexation talk of Canada as the 51st state and new American tariffs, Canada has been looking to diversify its oil markets. Recently, China has emerged as a major importer of Canadian oil while cutting U.S. oil imports by 90%. Since the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, Canada has been exporting 207,000 barrels of oil to China per day. If Canadian oil increasingly flows to China instead of the U.S., it can result in higher costs for U.S. producers and more expensive energy prices for ordinary Americans. U.S. energy companies lose out on opportunities to process, transport, or trade that oil. America is not just losing friends, it is losing influence, economic opportunities, and its global leadership. Trump's message was clear: alliances didn't matter. His thoughtless policies make America more isolated and threatens its position as a global superpower. Once trust is lost, it is near impossible to regain. Trump is also fueling the ticking time bomb that is the USA's federal debt. Federal debt has almost reached $37 trillion. Trump's spending plans alone is expected to add $8 trillion to the federal debt by 2035. The U.S. government must pay more than $1 trillion a year alone just to cover its interest on the debt. This accounts for almost 20% of all its annual tax income. Annual interest payments have even surpassed the USA's defense budget. This huge debt is harming investor confidence in the economy. The possibility of default was once unthinkable, but is now only a matter of time. A U.S. debt default would cause the worst economic depression in human history. Global financial markets would crash. Assets like stocks and bonds would see their value disappear. Millions of people all around the world would lose their savings and pensions. Without the ability to borrow, the government cannot pay their employees. This could lead to a partial government shutdown. Critical services like education and healthcare would collapse, hurting millions of Americans. Interest rates would soar, crippling business investment and consumer spending. The U.S. dollar would also collapse, losing its status as the world's currency reserves. This makes imports much more expensive, causing hyperinflation. Unfortunately, politicians like Trump do not care. They are only concerned with maintaining their own power and wealth. If that means wasting trillions in taxpayer money on stupid policies like Trump's big, beautiful bill, then so be it. Trump's relentless efforts to pressure and undermine the Federal Reserve threatens to politicize one of the country's most important institutions, an institution that serves as a cornerstone for maintaining economic stability and controlling inflation. Trump has repeatedly criticized the Fed for raising interest rates, blaming them for slowing economic growth. Trump wants lower rates to make borrowing cheaper, allowing for more spending and investment. The Fed is supposed to be independent. This independence is crucial for making unbiased, evidence-based decisions about interest rates and monetary policy. Trump has even threatened to sack the chairman of the Fed, Jay Powell. Political interference by Trump is worrying investors. If investors suspect that policy is being directed by Trump, markets will become more volatile and unpredictable. Political interference can erode trust, destabilize financial markets, and make America less resilient to economic shocks such as COVID. Donald Trump's comeback has reignited deep divisions in the USA, but the real danger lies in his stupid economic policies that threaten to unravel decades of American global dominance. Trump's promises to restore past greatness may resonate with millions of voters, but the reality of his actions paints a far more troubling picture for the country's economic future. Remember, friends, never trust politicians. From reckless trade wars and mass deportations to the ballooning national debt and attacks on key institutions like the Fed, Trump risks destroying the very foundation and pillars of the U.S. economy. Ordinary Americans are already feeling the inflation, shrinking job opportunities, an unstable stock market, and a housing crisis that shows no signs of easing. Meanwhile, the erosion of trust with long-standing allies and the potential for a historic debt default could plunge the nation into unprecedented economic turmoil. For the U.S. to stop this decline, it must break free from the chaos and short-sightedness of Trump. Time is running short. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and we will catch you in the next video.